This is one of the presence sensors I've genuinely been looking forward to testing because most presence sensors have one major problem. They either work well but look ugly, or they look clean and don't really do enough to justify putting them in your smart home setup. I think Apollo approached this very differently from most presence sensors in the market. Over the past few weeks, I've been testing it in real automations, changing placements, adjusting detection zones, using the built-in RGB notifications, experimenting with the buzzer, and trying to figure out whether this actually improves everyday smart home living or whether it's just another gadget that sounds impressive on paper. So in this video, I want to go through the entire experience properly, from the unboxing and hardware design to setup, placement, home assistant integration, actual real-world automations, the limitations, the things I liked, and the things which I think could still improve, and then finally, whether I think it's worth the price. Apollo did send this out for review, but nothing in this video is sponsored or controlled by them. Everything here is based on how it actually performed in my setup. First to unboxing and first impressions. Apollo sent over the MSR-2 along with pretty much all the available accessories and mounting options, so I got to test the full experience rather than just the base sensor. However, I didn't get the CO2 sensor version. You can buy the standard version if all you care about is presence detection and environmental sensing, or you can configure it with additional sensors like CO2 monitoring, depending on how advanced you want your automations to become later on. That modular approach makes sense because not everyone needs everything. Straight out of the box, my first reaction honestly was just how small it is. Pictures online really don't show the scale properly. This thing is tiny. I'm actually testing another extremely small presence sensor right now for a future review, so I don't want to confidently call this the smallest presence sensor available anymore. But I genuinely think this might currently be the best balance between size and functionality. It's incredibly small, just a little larger than a coin in width, and because of that, it doesn't immediately stand out when placed in the room. You can wall mount it, angle it using the stand, or place it on a shelf, sit it near a monitor, or even tuck it into certain spaces without drawing attention to itself. Now, the construction itself is clearly 3D printed. Apollo doesn't really try to hide that. So if you're expecting polished Apple-style hardware, this isn't that. It still looks more like a well-made enthusiast product rather than a mass-market retail product. But honestly, I think that works in its favor, because despite being 3D printed, it still feels practical and purposeful. The casing is lightweight but solid enough and nothing rattles or feels loose. The articulating stand is also a really nice addition because it matters a lot with mmWave sensors. The angle affects detection massively. The stand wasn't perfectly smooth to insert because of the printed texture, but once connected it held position properly and worked well during testing. The actual sensor body itself has a USB-C port on the side for power. Ventilation grills across the casing and a surprisingly clean internal layout. And yes, I opened it, because this feels like the kind of device people buy actually wanting to understand it. The internal layout is honestly very neat. The radar positioning makes sense, and the airflow channels for optional environmental sensors are well thought out, and you can clearly see where the optional CO2 module sits if you decide to get that version later. Mine didn't include the CO2 sensor, but I like that the upgrade path exists. And this is also the point where you realize calling this a presence sensor almost undersells what it actually is, because presence detection is really just one part of it. You're also getting motion sensing, light sensing, temperature sensing, RGB status lighting, a piezo buzzer, Bluetooth proxy functionality, and depending on the configuration, additional environmental monitoring as well. So rather than feeling like a single purpose sensor, the MSR-2 feels more like a compact smart room controller. Setup was honestly straightforward, and if you're already deep into the home assistant ecosystem, this is where the MSR-2 immediately starts making sense. The sensor is ESPHome based, which means everything is local. There is no cloud dependency or account creation, and there's no weird pairing systems. For me personally, that matters a lot because the entire reason I moved heavily into Home Assistant was to avoid cloud-dependent smart home products that become unreliable the moment your internet has problems. The setup process itself is simple. You connect power through the USB-C using the standard 5V power supply, and once powered on, the sensor creates a temporary Wi-Fi hotspot. You connect to it, open your browser and type in 192.168.4.1, enter your Wi-Fi credentials, and then it joins your network. Once connected, Home Assistant detects it automatically through ESPHome, and that part genuinely works well. And once it showed up inside Home Assistant, that is when you realize how much data this thing actually exposes. In total, the MSR-2 exposed around 85 entities into Home Assistant. And yes, 85. And that's why calling this just a presence sensor really doesn't explain what it is. You're getting occupancy states, moving targets, still targets, zone detection, signal strength, light levels, temperature readings, radar gate controls, engineering settings, LED controls, Bluetooth proxy controls. There's a lot. Now for advanced Home Assistant users, that's fantastic because it gives you full flexibility. But I can also see new users opening Home Assistant afterwards and immediately feeling overwhelmed by the amount of entities suddenly available. The good thing is you don't actually need to touch most of them. Out of the box, the defaults were already usable. I didn't have to spend hours tuning it before it became useful. But if you do enjoy tweaking and optimizing automations, the amount of control here is honestly excellent. And because it's ESPHome based, everything feels open rather than locked down. You can edit behavior, adjust sensitivity, modify thresholds, tune zones, and update firmware locally. It feels like a device made for people who actually enjoy building smart homes rather than simply buying gadgets. It also works with Homey, which is nice because it isn't tied to one ecosystem. Before talking about real-world use, it's important to understand how this sensor actually works, because a lot of frustration people have with presence sensors usually come from placement or misunderstanding the radar itself. The MSR-2 uses the LD2410B mmWave radar sensor, and the mmWave behaves very differently from traditional PIR sensors. A PIR sensor immediately detects movement changes, so if you walk into a room, the lights will turn on. But if you sit still long enough, the sensor thinks nobody is there and turns everything off. That's why traditional motion sensors fail in offices, bathrooms, and workspaces. mmWave is different because it can detect micro movements. Breathing, small posture changes, tiny hand movements. That's what allows it to maintain occupancy even when someone appears still. But radar positioning matters a lot. MSR-2 has roughly a 60-degree detection field, and like most LD2410 based sensors, is strongest when mounted correctly facing the area you actually occupy. It also allows zone-based distance detection. This is one of the best parts of this sensor. You can divide detection into multiple zones based on distance, allowing different automations depending on where someone is within the room. And this becomes extremely useful in larger spaces. You can also configure radar gates and sensitivity values manually. So if you're getting false detection from fans, reflections, nearby movement, or thin walls, you can tune it room by room. Apollo has proper documentation explaining all of this on their site, and honestly, I'd recommend reading it, because understanding radar tuning improves the experience massively. The sensor also supports engineering mode inside Home Assistant, which lets you visualize how the radar behaves in real time. That was surprisingly useful during setup, because you can actually see where detections are happening and adjust positions accordingly. Now, in terms of environmental sensing, the light sensor works very well for automation purposes. It isn't trying to become a professional luxmeter, but it gives stable enough readings that you can absolutely build reliable brightness-based automations from it. And for most smart home systems, that's actually all you need. The temperature sensor, though, is probably the weakest part of the environmental package. Not terrible, just not something I'll rely on as my primary room temperature source. And that's understandable. This device is doing a lot internally, and the electronic heat naturally affects reading in the compact enclosure. Apollo does include temperature offset calibration, which helps, but personally, I'll still use a dedicated room temperature if precision matters heavily to you. Also, for temperature, the mounting location matters. So wherever you put your sensors to get accurate detection might not be the best place to get accurate temperature readings. The first place I installed the MSR-2 was actually my kitchen, mainly because my kitchen layout gave me the perfect opportunity to test zone detection properly. The room is around 8 meters long and combines both the kitchen area and dining area into one open space. Normally, with standard motion sensors, you either end up lighting the entire room all the time or create awkward delays or dead spot trying to separate the space. But with the MSR-2, I could actually use distance zones intelligently. So when someone entered the dining side, only the dining light activated. Then as someone moved deeper towards the kitchen space, the kitchen light activated separately. And this is the kind of thing that sounds small until you live with it daily, because then your automation stops feeling aggressive. The house reacts more naturally and you're not flooding an entire room with brightness just because someone walked in to grab a drink. And since the detection is based on actual occupancy rather than just motion bursts, the lights stay active when someone is seated at the dining table as well. And that's something PIR sensors struggle with constantly. It also reduced the number of sensors I needed in that room. Instead of using multiple presence sensors trying to approximate occupancy behavior, one well-positioned MSR-2 handled most of it. And honestly, multi-zone occupancy is one of the features that sounds technical when reading specifications, but in real-world use, it genuinely changes how the smart home feels. The office was where this sensor really proved itself, because if there is one room that exposes the weakness of traditional motion sensors immediately, it's an office. You sit still, you edit, you work, you focus, and eventually the light switch turned off because you haven't waved your arms recently. Mounted facing my desk, the MSR-2 worked well almost immediately. The lights turned on when I entered the room and then stayed on when I walked, even during long editing sessions where I barely moved. I also started using the RGB LED in the office for posture and movement reminders. If I had been sitting too long without standing up, the sensors flashed red as a reminder to get up and walk around for a bit. Again, it's a very simple automation, but because the reminder exists physically in the room rather than hidden inside the phone notification, it actually worked better for me. Now, originally, I thought the buzzer and the RGB lighting would be gimmicks, nice extras, but probably not something I'll genuinely use. But after integrating them into Home Assistant properly, I actually think they are one of the smartest parts of the device, because they allow notifications to happen contextually inside the room itself rather than relying on phones. You can play different tunes based on what automation you have activated. Shout out to Smart Home Scenes. I got to discover how to configure the buzzer to make sounds. And one automation becomes weirdly life-changing for me, bin reminders. Every week, I somehow forget which bin colors need to go out. Every single week. And normally, I'd end up asking Moyo what color the bin is again, which at this point she's honestly tired of hearing. So I built a Home Assistant automation using the MSR-2. On the night before the bin day, after 8 p.m, when I walk into the kitchen, the sensor plays a short tune through the buzzer if the bins haven't been taken out yet. At the same time, the RGB LED changes to the color of the correct bin for the week, and genuinely it works brilliantly, because the reminder only triggers when someone is actually present in the room. Then at the end of the day, it resets automatically, and this is where the MSR-2 feels smarter than many basic sensors, because it's not just detecting occupancy, it becomes an interaction point inside the room. One thing I was watching carefully during testing was stability. Smart home sensors can have incredible features, but if they disconnect constantly or require babysitting, none of that actually matters. Thankfully, the MSR-2 has been solid. There have been no random crashes or repeated disconnects, no constant ESPHome issues. Once configured, it largely just stayed working. That reliability matters more than specifications. I tested it across different rooms with different layouts and different detection ranges, and while I did need to fine-tune sensitivity slightly depending on placement, the actual hardware itself remained dependable. This is important because mmWave sensors can sometimes get a reputation for false detection or instability depending on implementation, but Apollo seems to have tuned the defaults fairly sensibly here. Now, despite liking the MSR-2 a lot, I do think there are a few things people should realistically understand before buying it. First, this is not really a beginner smart home product. You can absolutely set it up as a beginner, but to really get the most out of it, you need to enjoy tinkering at least a little bit, because presence sensing is heavily affected by placement, room layout, wall material, reflections, and sensitivity tuning. If your expectation is simply plugging something in and immediately getting perfect occupancy detection in every environment with zero adjustments, you'll probably end up frustrated. Secondly, mmWave sensors are amazing, but they are not magic. they still have limitation. Thin walls, moving fans, reflective surfaces, pets, room geometry, all of this can influence behavior. The MSR-2 give you tools to manage that, which is great, but understanding that reality matters. Thirdly, aesthetically, while I think the device looks clean for what it is, it still looks enthusiast built rather than mass retail. Personally, I don't mind that at all. In fact, I kind of like it because it feels honest. But some people care heavily about polished industrial design. At around £29.51, the MSR-2 sits in an interesting spot. It's definitely not the cheapest presence sensor available anymore, but I also think looking at it purely as just a presence sensor misses the point completely, because you're also getting environmental sensing, RGB notifications, buzzer functionality, Bluetooth proxy capabilities, zone detection, ESPHome integration, and local control. In practical use, one MSR-2 can sometimes replace multiple separate devices, and multi-zone occupancy especially changes the value equation a lot, because once you start using occupancy intelligently rather than simply reacting to motion, missions begin feeling dramatically more natural. Now, it still requires some setup, you still need decent placement, and if you enjoy fine-tuning, you'll probably get better results from spending time adjusting it. But overall, I think Apollo got the balance right here. Small size, good flexibility, strong home assistant integration, local control, useful extras that actually become practical in daily life. If you're deeply invested in home assistant and want occupancy-based automations that genuinely improve how your house behaves, I think the MSR-2 is absolutely worth looking at. Especially if you've been frustrated by traditional motion sensors constantly getting things wrong. I think this is one of those devices that quietly upgrades the quality of your automations more than you expect before using it. I'll put a link to this sensor in the description below. If you enjoyed watching this video, click the like button and subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.